You're listening to the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast. Today's episode is part of a series I've been doing in the month of June 2026, all about the questions that my listeners, my readers, my community members are asking themselves. And today's topic is, why do I feel crazy when I have toxic in-laws? Are you a Catholic wife who's grappling with challenging in-laws? If so, you've found your sanctuary here. Welcome to the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast, a place where we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on, and you finally get the validation you've been seeking. I'm your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife and convert who's weathered nearly 3 decades of in-law drama. But before we dive in, let me just share this quick message. This podcast is my own personal journey and is not an official ministry or apostolate of the Catholic Church or of any diocese. I have no ecclesiastical authority. I am simply one woman with one story, taking it one day at a time, walking alongside you. Hi, I'm Miriam Susan, the host of the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast, and I want to welcome you to today's episode. Like I said in the intro, we are talking about the questions, the top questions that my listeners, my email subscribers, my community members are asking themselves about this crazy dynamic, this crazy journey that they're on with their toxic in-laws. And last week we talked about the first week we talked about, am I the problem? Last week we talked about, why can't I forgive? What's the deal? Why is forgiveness so hard when you have toxic in-laws? And so today we're going to be talking about this topic of, why do I feel like the crazy one? Why do I feel like I'm the one that's losing my mind? And you are not alone. Now, our scripture reference for today comes from the book of Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 17, and this is from the New Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition. And it says, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight." Now, let's take a scenario that you're probably extremely familiar with. Something happened. It could have been a comment. It could have been an action. It could have been your in-law showing up unexpectedly, uninvited. It could be them barging into your house. It could be any number of many things that can happen in a relationship with toxic in-laws. You know exactly what happened. You were there, but by the time your father-in-law or your mother-in-law finishes retelling the story, you barely recognize the story because it's not at all what happened. Now, chances are a lot of these things happen when your husband wasn't there, because that would be just another witness, right? So what your husband hears is his parents' version first, or maybe it's a more convincing version, because he still is in that role of being the dutiful son. He still very much wants to believe that his parents can do no wrong. Mine was there. I understand. And now you are the one who ends up being misunderstood. You are the one who didn't remember things like it actually happened. You are the one who overreacted, or you are the one who makes things difficult. But somewhere deep inside, you start to wonder, am I the one that's remembering things wrong? Am I going crazy? Hello, I'm another member of that club of knowing exactly what happened, having very clear memories of exactly what happened. And yet, after hearing this retelling, this fantastical, very believable retelling of whatever it was that happened, feeling like you are the crazy one. That happened to me. This happened with, it's something so ridiculous. And I realize that it is so ridiculous, but it is just a small example of what has been happening and what had been happening for decades with my mother-in-law. There's this story that she loves to tell about this date that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law went on before they were married and took along my husband and his brother's little sister. And she had this toy and that she got in her kids' meal, and she made some comment that everybody thought was hilarious. And my mother-in-law said that the whole thing happened at Burger King. But I knew that it happened at a Subway restaurants, the ones that make the sandwiches with any toppings that you want. And I asked her when she told the story, I said, wait, didn't that happen at Subway? Oh, no, it happened at Burger King. And I was like, did I remember it wrong? Now, at this time, we had young children, and we would go to Subway and get the kids' meals because they were like teeny tiny little sandwiches, perfect size for the kids. And I knew which toys they got. And so I thought, what is going on? Like, I know that it was not at Burger King. But up in the playroom at my mother-in-law's house, she had the toy. So after this whole retelling of the story happened, I decided to go up to the playroom and see if I could find this little toy. And wouldn't you know, I found the toy. And because of the, licensing agreement or whatever it was, this toy had the stamp of the restaurant on the foot of this little figurine. And guess what it said? It did not say Burger King. It said Subway. And I tell you this story because these are the kinds of things that make you feel like you're going crazy. These are the little things. And it is like a little thing. Like, this story is completely harmless. Like, it's not a big deal that my mother-in-law said it was Burger King when really it was Subway. But it was just proof in my mind that she can very convincingly tell a story that is not true or has an element of truth, but some of the details are false. And it was really a self-vindication of knowing, no, I did remember things correctly. No, she did not. And she denied it even when confronted. When I asked her, no, wasn't it Subway? No, it was Burger King. And I know. This story sounds absolutely ridiculous. Why am I even bringing it up? It's because it's these kinds of things over and over and over and over again that make us feel like we are going crazy. So when somebody completely rewrites history, we're talking about more than just Burger King and Subway here, it erodes your ability to trust yourself and to trust your memory. And you're not losing your mind. I was not losing my mind when I remembered that it was Subway and not Burger King. What ends up happening is you lose the confidence that you have in your memory because somebody else keeps coming in and editing it. They keep changing it. And this is really disorienting in a context of faith because we have been taught, the Catholic Church, I think, better than any other denomination that we have been a part of, teaches us to assume the best, to give the benefit of the doubt, to be charitable, to not hold grudges. But your charity is being used against you in these circumstances. And your own instinct to be fair is the tool, is the mechanism that your in-laws are exploiting. So why does the truth matter? And what is the cost of denying it? So back in Proverbs, it says, being a faithful, true witness is a virtue, and being a false witness is an abomination. I don't know any Catholic who values their faith who wants to be considered an abomination. Nobody does. right? Nobody in your right mind does. So you're not being dramatic and you're not holding a grudge when you insist on what actually happened. What you're doing is you're actually being a faithful witness to your own life, to your own experience. So when I'm thinking, no, it was Subway, it was not Burger King, I'm not holding a grudge. I'm not seeking to discredit my mother-in-law over such a stupid, insignificant detail. What I'm doing is I'm being a faithful witness to what I know to be true. So when your in-laws rewrite specific events to your husband or to the extended family, what they are actually doing is recruiting people into their own reality that is not true. So this is why we often feel so alone in the room when our husband is there, because they're not believing the same version of the story. So in that room, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were not even there to counter her false memory that it was Burger King. But everybody else was like, oh yeah, that's so cute. You know, she went to Burger King. I mean, the whole premise of the story, like even some of the details of the story, had to do with it being at Subway. But it is very isolating when you are the only one that actually remembers what happened the way that it happened. Now, I know that there's always going to be, you know, your truth and their truth and different perspectives on stories, especially when it comes to feelings. But there are certain details that are just fact. And when those get rewritten, and you're the only one that recognizes that the facts were not there, it is very, very isolating. And so this crazy feeling that we have is often a gap between what we know to be true and what the people around you are willing to acknowledge. So when this comes to the toxic behavior that you experience with your in-laws, if nobody else has seen it, if nobody else has experienced something similar, and you're in the middle of a room with a whole bunch of people who have been recruited, they're on your in-law's side, guess what? You get to be the crazy one. You are going to be the one who is overreacting, who's being dramatic, who misunderstood what was being said, when really you understood pretty clearly. When really your reaction was very valid for whatever it was that was done to you. But because you are one against many, it makes you feel crazy. It really does. It makes you question your reality. But here's the thing. You don't need really anyone to agree with you to know that it's true. You don't. The facts are the facts. I knew it was Subway. I didn't need anybody else to agree. I did go down and tell my husband. It's like, look, this toy up here in the playroom, it says Subway. It does not say Burger King. I was right. But nobody else has to believe you or agree with you for facts to be facts. And we have to remember that God was in the room and he saw exactly what happened. Sometimes that's not very comforting because God's not exactly going to, I mean, I guess he could if he chose to, but he's not going to appear in the middle of this room and point out the lies that have been told. So it's really just us and God. God knows what happened. You know what happened. And as hard as that is, sometimes that's all we've got. But you don't need to work to prove that your version is true. What you need to do is to just stop needing their, correction to be your reality. You don't have to believe their version of the story. You can just be content. I know it's not easy. You can just learn to come to grips with the fact that your in-laws are going to tell stories that are only partially true. And the partially untrue parts are going to paint you in a negative light. And that is something that my husband and I have had to deal with, realizing that the version of stories, the version of events that all of our extended family on my husband's side have heard are painting us as basically evil ingrates who have left our faith in God and now we are controlled by Satan. We've basically been told that in writing, in voicemails. And we can't combat it. That's the harsh reality of having a relationship that is as toxic as ours has been with my in-laws. I say relationship, but we don't really have one with them anymore. Now that we're protected by the courts against any contact from them. But we've just had to kind of grieve the fact that the truth is not going to come and be made known to the extended family as long as things continue the way they are. As long as my in-laws have their ear, we have no contact, things are just going to be as they are, and the extended family is going to see us as evil, ungrateful, bitter, unforgiving, non-Christians who are masquerading as Christians. And it's just not true. But we don't have the time and mental energy to go about trying to disprove it. And I would actually discourage you from investing a whole lot of time and energy and trying to prove to people on the outside that what they're hearing is not true. If they come to you and ask you for your side of the story, that's completely different. Then you can talk to them. Then you can share with them, I know this is what you may have heard, but this is what actually happened. But we've not had anyone in my husband's extended family truly and genuinely come to us seeking to understand our side of the story. Nobody has. And that can make you feel crazy, but you're not. Because you're just trapped in this culture, in this system that values the persuasiveness of the toxic person over the truth. And that's really hard. That's really hard when you are someone who values truth, because that's a key tenet of our faith. Especially those of us who are converts. We are converts because we came to the Catholic Church seeking the truth. And yet, in our relationships with family members, that should be the most supportive and loving relationships that we have, the truth is not there. Or the truth is very much twisted into something that is not true at all. So I want to encourage you not to feel like you have to straighten the record out, because you'd be fighting a losing battle. Toxic people are so persuasive. They're really good at what they do. That's how they have gotten to this point in their life and still have relationships. It's because they're really convincing. Or if they have relationships that are with people who don't believe them, those relationships tend to disappear. They tend to go away. They tend to be villainized. And just the whole idea that if you start to not believe, if you're in this family culture, if you're in this family dynamic, and you start to not believe the toxic person, then a whole lot of things start to crumble about the whole entire family structure. And a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. And I understand that. It's hard to have a reality shifted. For some people, it's just too much to consider that there is an alternate reality, and it's not the one that I'm in right now. So, you are not crazy. You might feel like you're going crazy because everybody around you is seeing something different than you are, but that doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just means that you are a witness to something that people need you to unsee. But you don't have to. You don't have to unsee it. It's hard to unsee when you've seen something. And you have to realize that the people who are siding with your in-laws, the people who they've recruited, they are really invested in you unseeing what you've seen. And so they will oftentimes fight alongside that toxic person for that version, the false version of whatever it is that has happened. The false version of that toxic person that they're believing is who they really are when it's really not. It's the false front. It's in the Wizard of Oz. It's the wizard, the big green head with the smoke and all that, and not the guy behind the curtain. They just want to believe the public version and not the private version that oftentimes is what we see and we get to bear the brunt of. And it's almost impossible to shatter people's reality and see what they don't want to see. So if this has hit home with you, if you feel like you are the crazy one, if you feel like you're the only one in the family that sees your in-laws' behavior for what it really is, then I want to extend this invitation to you to join the community that I have at toxicinlaws.com. It is a free community to join. There is a paid upgrade if you want deeper insights into things like legal protection, how to handle boundaries, how to handle the holidays, self-care, online privacy, those kinds of things. That is in the paid upgrade version. But the community is absolutely free, and you will find yourself with other women who are asking these same questions that I've been talking with this month. Am I the problem? Why can't I forgive? Am I the crazy one with toxic in-laws? We're all in there waiting for you to join us. So please come to toxicinlaws.com. We would love to have you join us there. God bless you. Go in peace. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.